VATS is a staple for the Fallout series, one of its biggest features since the beginning. It's a big part of what makes Fallout, and of course in-game, it is a powerful mechanic, the ability to freeze time, pick what you want to shoot at, get critical hits on targets, while the good Vault-Tec equipment handles all of the aiming for you. VATS is just inherently powerful, which can make it very difficult to adjust because it's very easy to make it overpowered, which many would already consider it to be, or you make it completely useless and forgotten, in which case you take away a large part of what makes Fallout. And a host of changes are being made to VATS in the upcoming update, launching in December, and these changes are currently live in the PTS, and it's already got the community talking quite a bit, so there's a couple of questions that we're going to be looking at today. Now, I'm mainly going to be using Commando as an example because it is by far the most popular build option to go with, for VATS especially, and I'll be seeing how this affects both Bloodied and full health builds, so everyone's included the glass cannons and the voracious warlords. I think the first question to ask is, why change it? Now, this isn't to complain about nerfs or anything, but legitimately, why change it? VATS is a powerful mechanic, a Fallout feature that has always been there. It's not all of a sudden a problem. They already adjusted it in quite a big way for 76 in that it doesn't freeze time anymore. It just slows it down a bit to give you the usual targeting because 76 is a multiplayer environment, so that makes sense. It had to have some change, but now it's VATS hit chance, damage multipliers, bonus damage adjustments. All of those aspects are seeing changes, so at least for me, this is another case of the complete wrong thing is being targeted. Maybe if they had used VATS, they would have seen the right thing to target. So what is the actual problem then? Well, for some players, they would say the problem is Bloodied, and that's why VATS is seeing nerfs, because Bloodied is extremely powerful, and it has a lot of synergy with a ton of aspects in the game that probably weren't originally intended, which has always put it at the top of the builds list. And over time, it's just gotten better and better, and Bloodied builds can take care of events and bosses by themselves very easily, which is also probably not what the devs had in mind either. But this is also not the actual problem. For some reason, no matter what game and dev team you go to, I don't know if they all read from the same development manual, but when one of the builds is extremely powerful, they seem to nerf systems around it, which barely change that build itself, but all of the other builds take an even bigger hit from the changes, and the one that was indirectly targeted, sure, took a hit, but it's not really changing much for it. Which leads to the actual reason of what the core problem is, and that's not VATS, it's not Bloodied, it's that all of the other builds are crap in comparison. All of the other builds have way less synergy than Bloodied does, which makes it so powerful. Whether it's Commando, Heavy Gunner, Auto Melee, Pistol, it doesn't matter. Full health builds have no unyielding for massive stat boosts. They have no Adrenal Reaction or Nerd Rage equivalent. That's just the ones off the top of my head. Rifleman suffers from very slow DPS. Shotgunners have needed serious love for years. Terrible accuracy, no armor piercing. And all of that is fine. Rifles are supposed to be slow. Shotguns do have terrible accuracy and are not used for armor piercing generally, but the point is, instead of nerfing a larger system, just buff and give the terrible ones the actual love that they need. It's not that complicated. Rifles are slow, cool. Boost their accuracy and range massively and give them a large damage boost. Shotguns need to be close, boost their damage because that's what they are known for. Chucking cards that give them synergy for that playstyle. Maybe the closer you are to enemies, the more damage resistance you have, or the more damage you do. The new 4-star legendaries are very cool, but arguably a lot of those effects should be perk cards for specific builds, not 4-star legendaries that are going to be extremely hard for most of the community to get because it's going to be behind the raids. You have some cool ideas, devs. You're just implementing them in the wrong areas. If you want to nerf Bloodied, then nerf Bloodied. Don't target other systems that affect all of the other builds. Drop Bloodied survivability. Make it an extreme glass cannon if you want players to benefit from those stats and damage. Arguably, death isn't even a concern in this game because there's no downside besides dropping junk, but there's different ways to actually nerf Bloodied. So if the problem is Bloodied builds killing everything in VATS before anyone else can do anything about it, don't just automatically target VATS for nerfs. Tons of players would love to be a rampaging shotgun lunatic, a massive long-distance sniper, or a crazy axe-wielding barbarian, but there's just no viability for those builds, so they don't. So instead of nerfs, give them cool perk cards for those playstyles. Don't nerf VATS or boss health, because all that does is hurt other builds and turns enemies into bullet sponges, which we see in a million games already, and that's a lot of what's happening here. There's a reason you only see a very small amount of builds, because they're the only ones that are viable, most of them being Bloodied and stealth. I don't want to spend an hour whacking a super mutant with a melee build when I can just take it down with 2 shots from my Bloodied Commando. Adjust what needs to be adjusted, but more things in the game need buffs, not nerfs. Playing on the PTS, yeah, my Bloodied build doesn't really feel any worse. Slight change in damage and accuracy, sure, but stats are still so high that it really doesn't make that much of a difference overall. Bloodied is still Bloodied, and with the new legendary effects, like ranges on the armor boosting range damage, and pinpointers on weapons, Bloodied is just eating all of that up, but it's fine without it. But again, more synergy for it, more things it can use. But on the other hand, other builds like full health builds, while you can still make them powerful and good enough, they need way more help. Ranges on the armor, pinpointers on weapons, these are just more of a necessity than a nice addition to boost damage. VATS enhanced to make sure you're getting targets hit. Higher costs for perk cards like concentrated fire. There's just so much more you need to do to get the same result, which then locks you out of a bunch of other stuff, because you need 3 times the same perk card than a Bloodied build equivalent does. Again, not VATS, that's the issue, not necessarily Bloodied, it's the other builds, the lack of love and support for those builds, and I'm a Bloodied player. Whether it's in power armor or regular armor, I'm Bloodied. There's just too many synergies and benefits to pass up, and that's even in power armor, which doesn't benefit from unyielding. There's just so much you can do with it. Heavy Gunner gets its armor penetration from stabilized over in intelligence, but of course, only when you're in power armor is it of any use. Well, Bloody doesn't care because you have so many boosts. You can go Heavy Gunner in regular armor and forget about that perk card because you just don't need it. But you can't do that as a full health user because you're just lacking damage then. Also, for certain full health builds, losing stealth massively affects your damage output, whereas again, Bloodied doesn't really care too much because they have enough damage sources to back up their damage if they don't have stealth. If you're trying to get the players to use free aim more, well then again, give more perk cards that encourage that, but not at the sacrifice of damage and other stuff as well, because we literally don't have the space in the loadouts for all the cards needed then. Start adding keywords which already exist, can't be used in power armor, etc. Well, can't be used below X amount of health, so that Bloodied builds can't just use everything. It gives cards directly to other builds, for example. Must be above 80% health to get X amount accuracy bonus to ranged weapons. I don't know, I'm just spitting out random thoughts here for cards, but you get the point. A lot of 76 is also very chilled and casual. The player base is very much casual. Yes, there are hardcore players and players that min-max that have the perfect gear and builds, but the players that you should arguably be trying to keep in the game just keep getting pushed even further out and leave it because on their non-endgame, non-min-max builds, changes like this completely destroy all viability if there was even any to begin with. And Bloodied is not the first go-to build for new players. They want health and survivability. Big guns and shotguns should be powerful, not some little pea shooter that destroys the boss out of nowhere and they're standing there doing nothing. These two builds that have been playing in the background here are both in the PTS. One is Bloodied, the other is full health, of course. And yeah, both are viable, but way more effort and godly rolls have gone into and they're needed for the full health compared to the Bloodied one. Bloodied barely feels the changes. Other builds definitely feel it. And this is also very much an end game perfected build, not even mid game or casual. So those are going to feel it even more so than if you don't have perfect rolls on your weapons or the 4-star legendaries on your armor and weapons. You get the point. Maybe devs listen, I don't know, but it's on the PTS, so try it out. Go to the PTS channels on the Discord, etc. and share your feedback. But don't be an ass. Constructive feedback, not just pure hate. Actually explain your thoughts and reasoning like a civil human being, But let me know what you think of all this in the comments. What builds you would like to see buffed and new stuff for instead of just adjustments to the complete wrong systems. But for now, thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.